Good evening. Welcome to the Finance Committee. Tonight is February 26, 2020, and we have several items in our agenda tonight. We're going to review and vote on transfer requests, look at an overview of the fiscal 2021 budget, and review the budgets of certain departments, and discuss a joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen. All right, so we have some some transfers here. So, Mr. Coyle, do you want to come up and talk about some of these? The first transfer, I'll start reading it, is the fourth one in your packet, and it's transferring, DPW Highway Division, transferring from wages to line item license. The amount of $750, reason for transfer, additional licenses need to be reviewed. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. The next transfer is from the highway wages to miscellaneous supplies for $2,500. Reason for transfer, we need to purchase 2 computers. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any questions? Yes? Ms. Oldham.
Excuse me. These transfers are all coming from wages. Is that because you have a vacancy, or?
Yes, through the chair, we've had an employee out and for the entire year through for a workman's comp claim. And just also to add to this, it's actually 2 computers and phones. We have 2 new hires, hopefully starting soon. That is what these transfers would be for.
Thank you.
Okay, I heard motion and a second. Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, next transfer is also from wages, going to the drug and alcohol testing line. Requested $600 due to mandatory testing. The account has a $30 balance. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No. Thank you. The next one, DPW wages, going to building maintenance. Amount requested is $7,000, and the reason given is office upgrades and equipment for new employees. Yeah, question?
Yeah, before Bill, can you kind of explain what you're doing with this?
Sure. There's been several changes, most notably with the retirement of Jeff Mitchell. We relocated the sewer division offices into the highway building, so that we're trying to consolidate all of the staff so that it's pretty much one-stop shopping. So the sewer employees have been relocated to the highway building. So we now have the secretary there and Joanna Paquin, who is now the sewer superintendent. But as a result of that, we have additional office space that we need to convert. We still have to hire a stormwater engineer. We have hired an engineer to replace Joanna. We've completed that office renovation. But we still have more office space to renovate, and one of the spaces in particular is a former jail cell, because it used to be a police station. There's no heat, no electricity in that cinder block room, and there's no windows, so it's kind of a fairly costly renovation. And also the breakers are maxed out, so there's no room for additional electrical, so we have to put in a sub panel as well.
Yes.
If I look at this one and the next one, can we combine that into one? Because it's all coming from the same account, going into the same account.
Through the chair, the only reason we did it separate was because this was more for maintenance repairs. We had issues with our heating system. We had ACE temperature on site, and that invoice was about $3,000. So I broke this one out separately because this was more of a maintenance item versus the modifications to the building. But certainly, however, the board wants to handle them as fine.
We can leave it separate, that's fine. Thank you. Questions? So we have a transfer from wages to building maintenance, $7,000 for office upgrades and equipment for new employees. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No. All right, and the next transfer is from wages to building maintenance for $5,000 for unforeseen building maintenance repairs. Can you tell us, you mentioned, Mr. Coyle, ACE temperature. Is
Yes.
that what this bill is for?
We had a repair, it was just under $3,000 to the heating system in the garage. So that was a very costly repair, and there are some additional electrical invoices related to that repair as well. So this will cover that and still leave us a little bit remaining, hopefully to get us to the rest of the year.
Okay, thank you. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
A second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. The next we have coming from wages, $129.20 to engineer's salary to eliminate the deficit in the account. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, next is from wages, going to highway superintendent's salary. The amount is $19.04, and this will eliminate the deficit in the account. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, now we have a transfer coming from wages going to overtime account, $2,500. Bill, could you tell us about this one?
Yeah, so this was actually, it's a little confusing because the Fleet Mechanic 3 was upgraded to a Fleet Mechanic 2 in our office during the contract negotiations. He is paid out of a differential, which gets charged out of the overtime account. So it's not really overtime, it's a differential that he gets paid, and this was a result of contract negotiations.
Okay. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? All right, the next transfers are for the Park Department. This is, first is a transfer from seasonal parks to wages, $72.42, transfer to cover the cemetery clerical position. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Next is also Parks Department, Parks Maintenance going to Education, $40 to transfer to cover class reimbursement. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. A transfer from labor and a transfer from the reserve account going to labor and parks account, amount requested $4,598.24, and this is due to an increase as per the union contract. This account is in a deficit.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Next is DPW Fleet Maintenance, coming from wages. Amount requested $2,500. An employee was upgraded from Fleet Mechanic 3 to Fleet Mechanic 2 per union contract. The additional money is to cover differentials. Do I hear a motion?
Through the chair.
Oh, yes.
1 second.
I'd like to put this one, if we can, put this one on hold.
Yep.
'Cause I'm thinking that the other one that came out of reserve account should have covered that. So if
Okay.
we can, why don't we put this one on hold?
All right, thank you. Okay, that one's on hold. The
Madam
next,
Chair, just want to remind the
Yes.
other
Yep.
members, a lot of these transfers were a result of successful contractual negotiations. That money was loaded into the reserve account, if you recall. So as these contracts are being settled, we're calculating the amounts due to the employees for the rest of the year and preparing transfers. So there will be some more coming to resolve some other union contracts.
Which departments can we expect the transfers from?
So I know DPW, I believe we try to, I think we need to bring the clerical ones for the GEU in. I think all the DPW ones are now done.
I think the DPW ones have been addressed, the last few tonight.
Yeah. Fire, we already did. Police, although no transfers were made, there were some vacancies within the department that allowed them to address it from within.
Yep.
Although we still have one group that we're currently in mediation with, and we don't know what the outcome of that is at this point in time.
Thank you. So we have a request for an interdepartmental transfer from for the Fleet Maintenance Department from wages full-time to fleet motor vehicle repairs, $10,000 to cover unexpected major repairs on DPW vehicles. Could you tell us about that,
Sure.
Mr. Coyle?
Madam Chair, we had two major repairs completed to two of our salt trucks this winter. I think one was in the order of magnitude about $6,000, and the other one was, I believe, in somewhere around $4,000, $4,500. So they were repairs that we felt were necessary. Fortunately, this winter hasn't been much of a winter, so it didn't cause too much of a problem, but we did send them out to get repaired. And they were repairs that were beyond the capabilities of our own department. So they were trucks they're two of our older trucks in the fleet, but certainly worth repairing.
Okay, thank you. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. The next transfer, DPW Sewer Division, it's coming from their contingency salary reserve line, going to salary for superintendent, $15,294.58. Reason for transfer to cover deficit due to payment of earned time upon retirement of Jeff Mitchell. Do I hear any questions? Okay, motion. Okay. Do I-
Approve.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Mr. Coyle, this is, that's it, Mr. Coyle.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. So why don't we come back to our transfers and let's listen to the overview of the fiscal 2021 budget.
Through the chair, while Mr. Kazanovich is getting that set up, just want to thank you for having us tonight. Hard to believe we're here again, starting with the kickoff for the next fiscal year. We're really pleased to present, as we have been, a balanced budget. Ed is going to go over all the details of it, but just a couple things I just want to highlight. Just briefly reference it, but with regard to the collective bargaining and the contract negotiations, which I think is a positive thing to talk about, we do have 10 contracts that were all due June 30th of last year. We started negotiations a year ago, January, with all 10 units. Ed and I and the respective department head sit in all of those negotiations without Labor Council unless and until we have any kind of issue that, obviously, to protect the town, we make sure we bring Labor Council in when it's necessary. And we're pleased to say we did complete negotiations with 8 of the unions by the July 1st contract. Actually, the sewer department ran a little late, but it was only because of some scheduling issues, but we closed it out, I think, in early September. Everything else was done. All the contracts, thank you to Sharon, have been integrated. All those that were completed, meaning all of the new terms have been put into the existing contracts, so we're really doing well on that. We do that in-house as well. We don't do that outside. 2 of the units, the patrol and the police superiors union, went to mediation. Patrol, we did settle in January, early January, and we are still, as Ed mentioned, still in mediation with the police superiors unit. So what I wanted to point out is some of the highlights of what we did negotiate this year and the benefits to the town for this. We did change our health contribution rate from 76.24 to 75.25. Very small shift, but more in line with what you see in other communities. Actually, some communities have gone to 70.30. We weren't there yet. We do have a healthcare trust. We didn't feel we needed to do that quite yet. We still want to make sure we give a good solid package, but we do want to keep within industry standards. We also negotiated with each of the unions other than the library. Each of the unions have an OPEB contribution now. And all new employees, other than, again, the library, including by law non-union employees, all new employees will be paying 2% of base into the OPEB trust fund. And that's a tremendous benefit for the town over time. We really want to thank our unions for recognizing that this is a long-term liability that we have to address. It helps our employees in the future with their benefits, and we all need to take part in it. And we will be implementing retroactive to July 1st, all new positions since July 1st. And most of those unions also have they all have a little bit different structure, but most of them also have a 2% payment for employees who are existing that would pay up until they've been here 10 years into the system. So if you've been here only 1 year, you pay another 9 years. If you've been here 8 years, you're only going to pay 2 years. There's nuances to each of the contracts. One of them is a 1% with no end date. Most of them are 2% with a 10-year end date. One of the unions did not have any payments for existing employees. We did also decrease the sick days for most of the unions. We were accumulating or earning, depending on the contract, a total of 15 days a year. And we've been doing an analysis for a couple of years, and we looked at it and saw some abuses on sick time in certain departments and felt that we needed to address that. In most cases, when someone calls out sick, it costs the town to backfill that position. So there was a large cost to us for the sick time. So we're happy to say that the non-union employees, all the bylaw employees, have reduced their sick leave accrual to 12 days a year instead of 15, and I believe all but one of the unions reduced their sick days also by 3 days a year. That's one of the unions that didn't reduce it by 3 days. We negotiated so the town would no longer pay into their sick bank 3 days a year per employee. So it's a similar savings to the town. So those were the three major components of the collective bargaining that the town was able to get this year. So again, we're grateful to the employees for working with us, and we think that this will really assist us with building our OPEB trust fund and helping to reduce that liability in the long term. And then lastly, I just want to mention the Mary D. Stone School, and then I'm going to turn over to Eddie to give the budget. But Mary D. Stone School, you've probably seen, we're very excited. The developer, Penrose, did get their tax credits, low-income housing tax credits. So that project, we will be selling that building the intent is to sell it in June. We're going to be going to town meeting. We have 3 articles that we need, not to sell, we've already got that, but we need 3 articles for various easements. We need 2 permanent and 1 temporary easement for the construction. So the intent is to sell those properties in June, and they're starting construction in July. So we were able to reduce that line item for the maintenance of the Julia Bancroft and Mary D. Stone building by 50% because one building will come offline. Julia Bancroft now goes into the pipeline. Same process that Mary D. went through, and if it works on the same timeline that Mary D. did, and I guess we don't know until the state funds these projects, but we're anticipating that it would be about a year behind. So approximately a year from now, the Julia Bancroft School would start. So that's good news for us, really exciting projects for us. And the last thing I just want to comment, we've done very well, all of us, all the department heads, want to thank them, all the departments, for the work they've done on grants. We've secured a number of grants this year. I think at this point, we're up around 274 grants that we've received, over $5.6 million in total. So that doesn't, it's not reflected in the budget, but I would tell you that those grant dollars, as they come in, reduce the need to either borrow for capital or to fund certain programs and services that we've been able to get alternate funding sources for. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Ed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Although we're just getting the budget to you now, here in the latter part of February, I can tell you, Julie and I have been busy formulating the budget and starting to pull together the core elements of the budget. It literally started the day after the fall town meeting. So once those numbers are locked in, that begins our starting point for the next fiscal year. So a lot of work has been done since mid-October, leading up to the budget kickoff, and fine-tuning the numbers leading up till today, having our budget hearings and making recommendations. But part of that process is really identifying a lot of the key pieces of the budget. It's identifying the contractual obligations. It's trying to estimate based upon trend analysis and the state of the economy, how certain revenue numbers are determined. And one of the big uncertainties was the reformulation of the Chapter 70 distribution, which we didn't know how we were going to benefit from that. There were a lot of moving pieces, and as a result of that, Julie put out we decided to put out some early guidance to the departments that we would like to see a budget come in no greater than 2%. Try to zero in at 2%. That would give us a little flexibility if we had to make some adjustments, either to the good or to the bad. It makes it more manageable. Certainly, we know there were going to be some departments that come in higher than 2 because of certain obligations, such as the SAFER grant for the fire. We knew we were taking on 2 new firefighters, and we'd have to pay a portion of that cost. But when you blend it all together and you balance it all out, we were looking for something in the vicinity of 2. So I'm gonna get into that a little bit. I have about a 10-minute presentation, at least identifying the highlights and the aspects of our recommendations and how that's going to impact us going forward for the next 8 weeks. So our recommendation before you tonight is asking for total appropriations of $72,156,000 and change. Offset by revenues estimated at this point of $72,338,000, leaving an unobligated revenue amount of $181,000. Based upon that, the total amount of 2.5 used in this recommendation is 84.80, or we would be taxing at 2.12 of 2.5. And by comparison, I will show you at this same point last year. But first of all, our total growth on the appropriation side is 1.67, offset by a total revenue increase of 2%, and that leads to a $181,000 unobligated amount. By comparison, when we brought our budget to town meeting last May for the current year that we're in, the budget growth was 4.18. So it's substantially less this year than it was the year that we're currently in. Why is that? Well, one of the reasons is shown in this chart here. Under Chapter 70, under the governor's proposed budget, we're getting $419,000. If you look at the 5-year history of Chapter 70, it's $899,000. So that's a $400,000 swing based upon the 5-year history. That puts more of a reliance on, to maintain a level services budget for the school department, it's going to rely on more tax levy dollars to offset those costs rather than Chapter 70. Certainly, there is some opportunity maybe for us to get more Chapter 70 out of the House or out of the Senate or out of the conference committee budget, but we don't see any significant gains as a result of that at this point in time. Here are the recommended appropriations by department. I want to highlight the school department. They asked for a request of 3.34. And their request is in your large booklet. Our recommendation is 2.75, consistent with all of the other departments. I know this is a hard slide to see, up on the overhead here, but you do have it as part of your packet. The total budgetary growth is 1.67, but if you look at growth on a departmental basis, it's 2.75. So consistent with town government, we made a recommendation to schools because certainly we cannot support a 3.34% increase at this point in time, given AI guidance and given the guidelines that we received from the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen asked us to try to minimize the impact on taxation. They wanted to see us come in around a 1% utilization of tax levy. Right now, we're at 2.12. Although we believe we can drive that down through a series of options, which I'll discuss at the conclusion of this presentation. This budget on new growth, once again, we're being conservative at 450. We're seeing swings in the economy. As you know, the last 3 days, the market has tanked, and we're concerned that may have an impact on a number of things. We just don't want this to spiral out of control, so it's great that we're using a conservative approach right now in the event the economy takes a downturn. On the local receipt side, we did add an additional $100,000 as a result of commitment number 1 that we recently received for the current fiscal year. We're $100,000 above last year's commitment, but certainly not ready to make any other changes until we receive our actual numbers at year end, which will be June 30th. At that point in time, we'll examine our local receipts and we make an adjustment going into the fall town meeting. I just want to highlight a couple of things on the budgetary side. Once again, the fire department, a portion of that increase is due to the additional 2 firefighters under the SAFER grant. We received funding over a 3-year period for 2 firefighters. Years 1 and 2, we have to cover 25% of that cost. The federal government covers 75% of that cost, including fringe benefits. In year 3, I believe it's a 65-35 split. So certainly we knew that obligation was going to be big into the budget. Solid waste collection, our contract expires on June 30th. We know there's going to be an increase in that. We don't have any cost yet relative to that renewal. We're hopeful to get that in the next 60 days. In addition to the disposal of our solid waste, there's going to be a cost, we believe, to dispose of our recyclables. The market has totally changed. China has closed their doors. They're not taking recyclables anymore. It's very difficult to ship that stuff out. We're hearing right now it's going to cost just as much per ton to get rid of our recyclables as it is our solid waste. So we know that's going to be a major cost that's going to that we're going to be facing beginning July 1. Employee benefits, we have a blended 8.97% increase, and that's comprised of an 8% increase in employee benefits, in employee health insurance. Hopefully, that cost will come in lower, but certainly we won't know until sometime in April. We know what our retirement assessment is. That's been calculated into that blended 8.97. Medicare, we index by our rate of contractual increases by a 1.45% rate. And any other fixed costs associated with that has been calculated at this point in time. In summary, our revenues over our expenditures equals, once again, our unobligated amount of $181,132.09. It utilizes 84.80% of 2.5, which comes out to be 2.12. In terms of objectives in this budget, certainly we're going to continue to mitigate our level of taxation as we move along. Last year at the annual town meeting, we were taxing at a rate of 2.34, so we're ahead of where we were last year. But we don't have the flexibility we had going into this year that we had for the current fiscal year. And I'll tell you why. Certainly, we're concerned about our new growth. We've had some active growth up until now. I just don't know if things are going to settle down as a result of some recent disruptions to the market. We're going to utilize any additional local receipts. Once again, we can't measure that till June 30th, so that will require an adjustment at the fall. We hope to offset our employee benefit costs when our bids come in. Hopefully, like this year, they'll come in lower. We saved $300,000 in the current fiscal year, which allowed us to drop our level of taxation down from 2.34 to a level of 1.17. And any additional state aid that may be above and beyond the governor's estimates. Here are our concerns. One, under the proposed federal budget that the president released, there are some serious cuts to Medicare and Medicaid that come back to the state that ultimately will affect some of our reimbursements. It may affect the entire state budget because that's a major funding source, which could end up in reductions in Chapter 70 and local aid. So we're going to be very cautious about that. Any costs, as Julie highlighted, associated with any agreement that may come out of mediation. We don't know what that amount is going to be at this point in time. We have pending litigation costs that could be substantial in nature that are unknown at this point in time. The recent downturn in the federal, state, and local economy, certainly that bears watching. We had a recent uptick over the past year on our veterans services benefits. We were expending about $63,000 2 years ago. We're on a clip to expend $160,000 this year. Our caseload currently is at 18 claimants at $15,000 a month. That's running at a rate of about $185,000 per year. So we don't know what's generating this uptick, but these individuals are eligible under Chapter 151. We get 75% reimbursement, but we have to front the money initially through an appropriation. Once again, our solid waste and recycling disposal costs are concerning, although we're able to recoup that through user fee. We treat that, although it's not set up as an enterprise fund, we treat it as though it is an enterprise fund. We recapture 100% of our costs, including indirects, through user fees. Certainly, if there's an increase in fee, we're going to have to reconsider the fee we charge to our residents who use the program. We're concerned about the closing of the Fairfield Inn due to a recent fire. That's going to have an impact on our room occupancy tax. It's one of 5 hotels. That could be pretty substantial in terms of annual revenue. And we have unanticipated special ed costs. I informed the board at a meeting Monday night that the school department approached us after they submitted the budget. They had a notification that they had about $180,000 of increased special ed costs that they did not build into the budget for the current year, as well as the recommendation for FY21. That 181 does not include transportation costs, so it could be as high as $250,000. Certainly, we have in reserve, we have a sped reserve account that deals with those unforeseen costs. But this is just the beginning. There could be some additional costs that may come our way. We don't know. We have to find a way to handle that. I believe the superintendent is going to have discussions with the school committee in a meeting tonight on how to deal with not only FY20 costs, but as well as how they're going to deal with the FY21. So certainly this is going to have some discussion as we move along. When they come in, how they're going to deal with it at this point in time, we don't know. So, Madam Chair, members of the board, we do have a balanced budget before you, once again, with $181,000 on the table. We're not suggesting any use of that right now. In fact, we're going to try to increase that and try to minimize our use of tax levy money in this budget.
All right, thank you very much, Ed. Thank you. So why don't we open it to some questions? Trevor?
Yeah, I too. So on the special ed costs, and so you guys think that that isn't going to impact that 180 surplus that we have at the moment at all? There's going to be
Good question.
external ways to...
Right now, there's $350,000 that we set aside in a special ed reserve account, stabilization account. I believe that, and certainly we can accumulate up to 2% of net school spending in that account, which is about $550,000. So, over a 2-year period, the school department was able to put into that, contribute to that account, $350,000. Early discussions with the superintendent, we suggested, and they agree, that at least for the current fiscal year, that they draw from the reserve account. They intended on doing that early on in the fiscal year. Late in the fall, they were going to make a suggestion or request to the board, but held off. I don't think they can hold off anymore. I think that request is forthcoming. In terms of 2021, certainly we can revisit that. They do have the option to go into the reserve account. I would say if the financial situation improved, we can consider that, but we can't commit to that right now.
Second question, looking at the projected percentage changes and going off of kind of the expectation that everyone try and stay as close to that 2% as possible. With police coming in at 3.6%, I'm just kind of curious how are they benchmarking their salaries with 2 outstanding union discussions going on, and how is that going to impact that number going forward?
Okay, so we do have a set aside in the reserve account currently.
Okay.
For contractual obligations for patrol as well as the superiors. Whether it's adequate or not, we don't know. I believe the budget before you tonight reflects the contractual obligations for patrol that's already been negotiated. It does not for the superiors, which consists of a group of 9. So it certainly is not going to have an impact that the patrol would have because the numbers are far greater.
Right.
So, yeah, that's a concern that we have, that whatever adjustment that may be.
Okay. Thank you.
Through the chair, if I can just add something, I just, first of all, want to acknowledge that Ken Holstrom, the chair of the Board of Selectmen, is here, and I was remiss when I first opened it up, just to let the board, the Finance Committee know, the Board of Selectmen, per the charter, did vote on this budget to transfer it to you this past Monday night. So I want to make sure you knew that we did follow the process. It went to the board, and it's been transferred to you now, and also want to thank them for all of their guidance. And then second, I just comment on the different departments. While we gave the guidance of 2%, we knew there were going to be some departments that were going to be higher and that some were going to be lower. You'll see as we go through this budget, in some cases, those that are higher may not be higher because their costs necessarily went up that high, but we transferred some line items out of one department into another. So you'll see a decrease in one department because that line item got moved to another department. So we'll go through that as we go through the whole process, but there were departments that, as Ed said, overall we're at the 2.7% in the aggregate, recognizing that individual departments within the town had different needs and we had to address them. As you know, stormwater being a need, we had to, which we addressed some of it last year, we're going to have to continue to address that. The firefighters grant brings that one up a little higher than some of the other ones, but again, the overall that we were aiming for was the 2.75.
One additional comment relative to your question, Trevor. We increased the salary and wage reserve account in FY '21 to make allowances for whatever contracts have not been negotiated. So it's not as if we have to come back and add, we just have to transfer it out of the reserve account. No, I'm not going to, I don't want to tip our hat and tell you what that amount is, but we did make a consideration in there, so when the time comes, we can transfer it out.
Great, thank you.
Okay, question?
Eddie, you noted that Chapter 70 is projected down. Is there a specific reason for that?
The Chapter 70 formula is very complex, and certainly there's a new distribution formula that I'm not familiar with at this point because it's brand new. Certainly, I know it's needs-based, driven more so than it has been before, so a lot of the larger cities and communities are getting the lion's share of that $1 billion increase. We were not on the, when you look at the 5-year average, and I think, the budgets were driven primarily because of that increase, the school department budget. I think certainly we knew this day was going to come and couldn't support 4.25%, 4.5% increases every year because it's going to catch up with you. So we just didn't know what that amount was going to be. We now know what it is. Certainly, it's not consistent with previous year increases when you look at that bar graph. And as a result of that, they have to rely on other revenue sources to fund their budget, when in previous years, the lion's share of that was supported through Chapter 70 increases.
Okay. How many new positions are in the town side and the school side of
I'll
the?
let Julie speak about the town side. The school side, based upon their requested 3.34, they had one half-time equivalent, ABA. So,
And on the town side, we have one new position funded only for half of a year, so it's a half of a position, which we'll get into tonight when we go through a couple of budgets.
The increase in fire, how many positions did we add in? Have we already hired them this year? Those are in this current fiscal year? The grant was for how many positions? Two. And where does the reimbursement for that show in here? Does it?
it doesn't, just the town share, because I have to track that separately on the special revenue side as a federal grant. So I guess we could put I don't know if there's a footnote in fire's budget or not, I don't recall. I think there is. But it reflects the town's 25% share, 75% of the salary, including fringe benefits, is picked up on the federal side.
So that 75% is not shown in their budget. So it artificially...
If we don't take federal revenue in in the general fund, it has to be tracked separately under...
So it artificially deflates the actual cost for the fire department, their actual budget cost.
If you would have to take the general fund as well as federal grant to come up with a total.
Yeah. In my previous experience, we got lots of federal money for police officers, especially, back in the crime bill days. And for the purposes of showing complete data, we always carried the total cost with a grant offset.
There is an offset in his budget.
Oh, all right, it wasn't shown.
Safer grant will provide an additional $91,613 towards a career firefighter line.
Okay.
It's in your book, yeah.
Okay, that's what I was asking.
Yep.
I was looking in the revenue section,
Oh.
and I didn't see anything there. Okay, so that's where it is, it's in the, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? No, I have a question. When so the project, the new Mary D. Stone building project will be done, they're going to start it in July. When will it be done?
It will be done in September of 2021. So it's approximately a 15-month construction period.
So when can we see the impact of that on new growth? Not in this?
Not in this fiscal year, but you would, and as a matter of fact, in this fiscal year, you're going to see, well, it's tax exempt right now anyway, so not until it transfers, but it always goes back to the value as of January 1st of the prior fiscal year, and the value of January 1st is still a town-owned asset. So likely you'll catch some of that value in FY
You can do an interim
22,
adjustment,
yeah.
even after January
little bit.
1, based upon the progress of construction. So we should be able to capture some value. I'm trying to think, so
So it will be about, a year from now, it will be approximately a little less than half done.
Okay.
So as I said, we can go back 15 months from now and go back and capture from the
Okay.
prior couple months. But you won't get 100% of it until project completion.
Okay, thank you.
We start seeing permitting fees and stuff drawn as of July?
There'll be partial permitting fees. Part of this whole process was that we reduced the permitting fees for this because it was a town building. So yes, whatever permitting fees come in, hopefully because it is a town-owned building, we're able to, that was part of our commitment to this housing, was to reduce the permit fees so it would reduce the cost to the developer. I should mention the total development cost for the Mary D. project is about $19 million, $19.5 million. Julie Bancroft, approximately the same.
Questions? All right, I think we're all set with the presentation for now. What we usually like to do is look at some of these budgets tonight. And we've got Julie here and Ed to ask them any questions. Ask them any questions. So if we go to our budget, the first one we can look at is moderator. One.
Motion to recommend.
Okay. So the department is moderated. The department request is $296, and the town manager recommends for fiscal 2021, $296. I hear a motion to recommend. Do I hear a second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion, that is done. Now let's look at the Board of Selectmen. Few pages up. The Selectmen, the department request is the salary request is $7,837, and that is also the town manager recommendation. The subtotal for the dues and conferences and meetings, department request is $3,450, which is the same as the town manager recommendation. So the total budget recommended by the town manager is $11,287. That's a 0% increase from fiscal 2020. Do I hear a motion to recommend?
Motion to recommend.
Thank you. Any second?
Second.
Second, thanks. All in favor? Aye.
I'm going to abstain.
Abstain? Thank you. Okay, 5 in favor, 1 abstention. All right, next budget we can look at would be town manager.
Right next.
Right next door? Okay. All right, Executive Office of Town Manager. The total department request is $398,469, and that is also the town manager recommendation. Under subtotals, the salary request and recommendation for the clerical and the town manager is $340,269. All right, and for the other departments, travel, meetings, et cetera, $58,200 requested and recommended. So I open this up for any questions and clarifications on what the line items contain.
Through the chair, if I could just add to this, on the, and this is good news, on the ICMA annual conference line item, this current year that we're in, calendar year, starting January, I became the president of the Massachusetts Municipal Management Association. And what I found out was that as part of that, the MMA will pay all of my conference dues because I am required to attend these conferences. So all of the cost of that gets picked up by the MMA. So that's why we reduced that line item. There may be some additional reductions that show up in professional services, which is also where some of the meetings that I have to attend for the MMA. So my understanding is that those are also covered for the year as well.
All right, good job, thank you.
Yeah, so that was, that was
Yeah.
nice to know. I didn't
Yes.
realize that,
Right.
so thank you.
But we'll be boosting that up the following year because it's a one-year appointment, right?
You sure you can't get reelected? Reappointed? That would help. All right, so gentlemen, ladies, any questions?
Motion to approve?
Motion to recommend the $398,469?
Correct.
Do I hear a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? So it's all recommended.
Well worth every penny.
Now, next is the Finance Committee budget. So here's our big chance. Make a change. Department request is $815, the same as last year and the year before and the year before and the year before. And this year's recommendation is $815, the same as last year.
Motion to recommend.
Do I hear a second? All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Madam Chair, we finally figured out why your predecessor left, because he wanted his pizza line item in there, we wouldn't give it to him.
You're right, I didn't even mention that, okay. Now we know. All right. Next, let's look at the Finance Department. We have the Accountant Department, Assessors, and Treasurer Collector. Yes?
Are we skipping reserve fund for a reason?
We normally hold off on the reserve fund.
Through the chair, if I may, on the finance division as a whole and on the accountant division. I am recommending a new position, half-year, starting in January, of a town accountant position. And I wanted to explain to the board why I feel this is critical to do this. And I'm not sure if some of you might have seen the article in the Worcester Telegram and Gazette, where not just myself, but other town managers across the state were interviewed and talked about not just succession planning, but the difficulty that we're all having in attracting employees to certain positions. It's a very good economy as far as unemployment goes. It's the lowest unemployment rate we've had in years. We're finding that it's very difficult for municipal government to compete with the private sector on salaries and what used to be a very strong benefits package for municipalities. As you can see, some of the things that have changed, it's not necessarily always better on the public sector. So it's just become a real struggle for communities to attract qualified people to come into these positions. And let's face it, students are graduating from college and they're not getting out and saying, I want to be a building inspector, I want to be an assessor, I want to be a treasurer collector. So we're working on a lot of programs statewide. We've got a program with Suffolk University, trying to get students to take classes in municipal finance, municipal management. We've got to build a workforce for the future, or as our positions start through attrition, through retirement, we're not going to have anyone in place to take these critical positions. So we've put it off for a couple of years, but I think we're at a critical point when we can't put it off any longer. We really need to have a town accountant. Ed Kazanovich wears 3 hats. When I first started, he was the town accountant and the assistant town manager. And then through the reorganization, we put the entire finance department onto him. So he's also the CFO. So now he's the CFO, he's the town accountant, and he's the assistant town manager. we can't keep up at that pace. I don't want Ed to keep up at that pace. I don't want anybody in that position to have to do that. I think it's a physical strain as well as just timing. There's only so many things you can get done in a day, even if you and I'm not saying that any of us work short hours, we work long hours, and even at that, it's hard to get our jobs done. I think in addition to trying to take some of the burden off to Ed, I want to make sure that when I retire in a few years down the road, and Ed, that we're leaving this town in a good position to sustain what we've started. And I think we've done a very good job with the budget. I think we've done a very good job with all of the initiatives that we have going on in town, and we don't want to see that end just because we may be retiring. And the next wave of people coming in, we want to make sure there is a next wave and that they're trained. So because of the difficulty statewide in securing and finding qualified people, we're finding that we have to hire people that don't necessarily have municipal experience. So, and if they do, they don't have a lot of municipal experience. Everyone is stealing from everyone else. Everyone is, we're all just stealing each other's employees, and unfortunately, a community like Auburn loses oftentimes because our salary doesn't compete with the eastern part of the state. You know, maybe we compete with the western part of the state, but certainly from the east, if you're able to move and you're able to drive, and which is pretty easy nowadays, people will go to where their salaries are higher. So we anticipate we may have to get a town accountant that doesn't have as many years' experience, but it takes years to understand the position. Municipal accounting is not private sector accounting. It's a completely different ballgame. It would be great to get someone who is a CPA or get someone with public accounting experience, but municipal accounting is critical. So in order to make sure we have the right people in place for the future, we're working on this a lot. We're looking down the road 10 years. Who's going to be here in these key positions in town? And one of the key positions in town ultimately is the CFO position. And before someone can be a CFO, they've got to understand the whole town accountant. So it's twofold. It's first of all to take a lot of the burden off of Ed right now, who's been doing these jobs, 3 jobs. And I don't think that's right, and it's taking away from some of the other things that he could be working on. Second thing is we need to make sure that we have redundancy, and if Ed isn't here for any short period of time or even a longer period of time, we don't have anyone in the wings who understands the system and can work the system that Ed understands. So I'd like to get someone in here starting a year from now in January. We knew it was a tight budget year, so we didn't create this position starting in July. But by January, we'd like to get somebody in here. We may be under budgeting this. We really don't know. We haven't gone out for a town accountant for a while. It may certainly be under budgeted. We can revisit that as we go out. But I think it's really critical that we get somebody in here and start learning hands-on the job. And hopefully, you know, in a 5-year period, you get the right person. That person is lined up and ready to slide into the next role as we all start moving forward. So that is the only position that we've requested in the entire budget for this year, and I would tell you, I think it's one of the most critical positions. There are some other positions, sure, we could use them, but this one, I don't think we can live without this one.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so let's look at that first department, accounting. The subtotal department request for salaries, $272,901, and that's the town manager recommendation also. For supplies, meetings, and travel, $3,080, and that's also the town manager's recommendation. So the department request is the same as the town manager recommendation, $275,981. Now, I believe we just recommend the bottom line, is that correct? We don't recommend this, all right. So any questions on that department? Okay, we can ask, you can go back to that later. Next department is the assessors. The department request and the town manager request recommendation are the same, $176,000 and $176,023. And the supplies and membership and reval lines, $25,504. And again, that's the same as town manager recommends for a total of $201,527. I have a question. Can you, I see reval is actually the highest it's been.
Yeah, there's some recent new regulations relative to the valuing of utility assets and personal property. That's going to require more of an effort by our outside vendor, RRC, to capture those values. They have to do it on an annual basis now. And there was a whole utility abatement thing that was put on hold for a number of years. That was before the courts in Massachusetts, and there was a ruling came out. We had to actually abate values that were determined to be too high. That went on for a number of years, and as a result of that ruling, these new directives have been initiated and required by every municipality.
Okay, I understand. It's a big jump. Well, it's a jump, yep. Any questions on the assessor, Department of Assessor? All right, next we'll look at the Department for Treasurer Collector. The subtotal for salaries, $219,229, the same as the town manager recommends. The subtotal for the other line items, non-salary line items, is $59,675, also recommended by town manager. So the subtotal for treasurer collector, $278,904, the same as the town manager recommends. Any question on treasurer collector lines?
Madam Chair, if I could just beat you to the
Yes.
question. The one that stands out is the
Yep.
bill printing. There's a corresponding reduction on the general services postage account by that value and reassigned to this department. The postage and general services, we want to intend strictly for metered mail that goes out. So any mail that is collected and sent to our residents for whatever reason goes through our postage meter. The one under the treasurer collector is for any bills generated through their office. There'd be trash bills, real estate tax bills, motor vehicle excise. Before, there was a sharing of cost between both general services and under this department. We want to separate that and track it separately and have a true cost accounting of each one of those items.
So it's the bill printing and the postage?
Yes,
Yes.
for the bills that are generated, including the postage, because we pay Kelly and Ryan, they send it out on our behalf at a bulk
Yep.
rate. So we pay them, which includes the actual bill print and the postage.
Okay, I understand. All right, any questions on, in the treasurer collector department?
I have a
Yes, yep,
question,
yep.
not about that one specifically, but about these positions. We had a discussion at our last meeting about salary adjustments for some positions. I don't remember if there were positions in this department that were related to that, but have any short falls in what we should be paying people been addressed in this budget?
So I think when we brought the last group of transfers before you, we were committed to updating our salary surveys and re-examining some positions that may be not competitive with the market rate. Certainly, we hope to have provided an amount under the salary reserve that will allow us to make those adjustments.
Okay, so it's not in any of the individual budgets?
No.
It's- Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. That answers my question.
Okay, so the total for the finance department, department requests $756,412, same as the town manager recommends. That's a $95,684.18 increase, 14.48% increase.
Motion to recommend.
Thank you. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you.
If I could answer Kim, I just want to elaborate on the comment I made before. There are some adjustments to some that were very obvious to us. It's time, but others we're going to have to examine.
So it's a two-phase. Like, as Ed said, we had done a salary study in FY19, and last year we came in with some of those adjustments, and as you know, some of them, we made a phased approach to that, and at the last meeting, the last Finance Committee meeting, we talked about that. So we are still in the process of gathering new information. Whatever adjustments we make, depending on how the budget can sustain it, and we'll know more in the fall, we can always make them retroactive to July 1, even though they're not necessarily in the operating budget right now. So some of those that we did make, we made, as you know, we did some transfers, and we made those immediately. We're revisiting some of the other positions. Unfortunately, and we thought we were catching up, but some communities, most communities, have been increasing their salaries at a higher rate than Auburn, so we were trying to make those adjustments. We're going to have to almost start all over again with our salary scale that we talked about at the last Finance Committee meeting. So we will be back with those, but we want to make sure that we have the appropriate comps and also figure out at what point we want to make those adjustments.
Okay, thank you. So this might be a good, before we continue with the transfers, this might be a good time to talk about what departments we want to have come in and present their budgets. So, and what nights perhaps people aren't going to be here, if they know ahead of time that they're not going to be here, maybe we don't put that particular budget, that department that you want to see, invite them for that night. So when we know we want to see fire and police, usually do that in the same night. In emergency management, the schools, DPW, DDIS, and Department of Public Services, Library and Council on Aging. Any particular requests or particular days that you might not be available?
Madam Chair, we do have public safety scheduled for next week.
Do, okay.
Both
Gotcha.
fire and police, we wanted to keep them together only because of recent discussions about public safety facility, how that may impact future budgets and...
Okay. All right, thanks. So that's the 4th, March 4th. Okay, so... That's next week. So can you contact them and see, just get them, the rest in on a staggered schedule? Okay, questions? No? All right, let's go look at the transfers then. We still have a few to do. The last transfer in the packet, let's take a look at that, is a transfer from the reserve account to the Bay Path assessment. The amount requested is $1,593. Reason for shortage in account, Auburn's increased minimum contribution based on state final budget. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second? Second, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Question? Sorry.
Eddie, did we not know what this was at the fall town meeting?
No, we were notified after. So, based upon that, I received a letter from Dean, I don't know, maybe in December or something. I don't know if you received a copy of it, but notifying us that I said, well, it would have been nice to be able to find this out for our fall town meeting. Now, we're forced to go to reserve account. Fortunately, it's small enough where it's manageable, but, yeah.
Thank you. All right, yes, sir.
Just while we have Bay Path on topic, I think I remember last year we had some questions about how that their allocation gets calculated against the other participating towns, and I just wanted to confirm that they're going to be here for the. I don't believe they were here last year when we voted on.
We'd be happy to invite them, and they'd be happy to come. Just if we want to tie it in the same night as schools, or
Yeah, I don't know if it was something you got separately outside, but I remember there being some sort of breakdown of, number of students,
We have
per
that.
town, and it was a breakout of kind of what each town was participating in, and then how much they were paying, and if we could get that in advance.
It should be in the book.
It may be.
I do remember us having questions last year, though.
If you would like to, I'm sure they would be glad to come out and talk about it.
But Trevor, all those calculations, it's probably in about a 9-page report, is in your book. if you want to take a look at it, and if you want any further questions answered, it would probably be beneficial for them to come. Primarily because you got a outgoing superintendent and someone new coming in. So I think it's a good opportunity for them to present the new superintendent maybe at that meeting.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and they have a formula that's pretty, it's not here, but it's a pretty dense, a formula, a lot of different factors and variables in it. All right, so we have two more transfers tonight. One is from the police department. Both are from the police department. It's money coming from the dispatcher's account to the chief's salary to offset year-end payroll shortfall, $14.89. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second? Second, all in favor? Aye. Thank you. The next is also police department. The amount is coming from the physical fitness bonus line. Amount requested $355.62 to the command stipend. Offset deficit resulting from the provisional sergeant appointment. Any questions? Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Opposed? No. The last transfer is also for the police department. It's a request for a transfer from the reserve account for salary and wage. Amount requested $567.64 to the clerical line in police department GEU contractual increase. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you.
We got one more.
We do have one more? Okay. Oh, yeah, emergency management is requesting a transfer from the reserve account going to their overtime account. Amount requested $1,500. Reason for shortage in said account, unanticipated costs relating to townwide generator maintenance and repairs. Any questions on that? Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. All right. So that's it for the transfers. Looking back at our agenda. Check, check, check. So let's discuss the scheduling of a joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen to discuss public safety facilities project.
Certainly, if I may, through the chair. And I want to acknowledge Kevin Kennedy, who is the chair of the Public Safety Facility Advisory Committee. And as you probably recall, about a year and a half ago, town meeting approved $150,000 out of free cash to fund a study. And we went through the entire state process, selected a engineering/architect firm, Tecton, who's done a great job. They came on board approximately a year ago, started the preliminary analysis, I believe, last December or January, and worked throughout the next couple of months to just evaluate the three public safety facilities, the police station, the fire headquarters, and the West Street Station. And on around June, maybe July, I appointed a public safety feasibility study advisory committee to work with Tecton and to start looking at the options that are available. The study was intended to look at three options: whether to renovate one, two, or all three facilities, expand upon one, two, or all three facilities, or build new, either a joint facility or three facilities. All options were on the table. And the committee worked very hard. They worked throughout the summer, throughout the fall. I know Kevin spoke a little bit at the fall town meeting, just to let town meeting members know that they were in the process of meeting. They held a meeting in November for the public. And all of the meetings are obviously public, but they did hold one meeting specific to gather public input. At the end of their process, which for now it's been suspended until we take the next steps, but at the end of their process, they provided a letter to me, I believe in January. And that letter, to summarize, just basically said that working with Tecton and looking at the buildings, there is no possibility to renovate the buildings at the cost that it would be to renovate them. Even if the buildings were renovated, they can't accommodate the operations of the police or fire department in the current footprint, and there's no room on any of those sites for expansion for a variety of reasons. And their report is pretty thick. It goes through in detail every single building and what the results are. So the committee recommended to me that we look at building a new joint public safety facility. So we put that report together and brought it to the Board of Selectmen in January, along with a timeline, which I'll share with your committee when we get to that point. But part of my recommendation to the board is to start joint meetings with the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee to talk about how we would fund this, what the funding schedule would be, and also just to determine the flavor of the Finance Committee for moving forward with this. I believe, and I can't speak for the board, but I can tell you the conversations they've had, and it was our recommendation that this go to the voters for a vote in November. Too early to do it in May. We're just not there yet. We want to do it right, not quickly. So we want to make sure that there's plenty of opportunity for a couple of joint meetings or more, if needed, with the Board of Selectmen, and then also some meetings to invite the public. And then if it does go on a ballot question, and I'll show you the timeline, it's pretty detailed, but the Secretary of State's office would need the ballot question provided to them from the Board of Selectmen by August 5th, which means that the Board of Selectmen, at one of their meetings in July, would have to vote to approve of the language that they want to see on the ballot question. And a ballot question would be needed if we needed to have a debt exclusion vote. So what we've been doing internally, in addition to supporting the committee and obviously working with the consultant for the last year, is looking at the potential financial impact on the town and how we could mitigate that. Our recommendation to the board would be that we would not want to start this project prior to 2022. The reason being the high school debt is retired, I believe, in April of 2024, and you can ban or short-term borrow for funds up to a 2-year period before you have to permanently go out for a bond. We don't want to go out for a permanent bond until the high school debt's retired. You don't want to carry both. So we would be looking to ban approximately April of 2022, meaning that would be approximately the time that you'd have to start construction. The other aspect of this that has to be looked at is there was no site that, and you must have looked at 13 sites, Kevin. There are no town-owned sites that would accommodate the facility for a variety of reasons, whether it be the size, whether it be wetlands, whether it be the location, being, if it's not in the right geographic location, that means you'd still have to carry 2 fire stations, one to service the west side and one to service the remaining part of the town. So it shrinks down the radius within which a joint public safety facility will work from a response standpoint. So that means we also would have to then go out to bid to purchase private property, unless you did eminent domain. That's not our recommendation. It's very expensive. We think we're better going out to bid and soliciting bids from local property owners who fit within that radius, who may have property that they're interested in selling, and some of those parcels have been identified. So that's just the sum of it. So we thought, given all that, it would be an appropriate time now to start meeting with the selectmen and the finance committee, very similar to the process that was followed for the middle school. The middle school went through a process where first you did the feasibility, you went through all the preliminary information, then you went on and looked at the financing and how that was all going to work. So our recommendation to the board, and they agreed, was to come before you this evening and see if we could, and we don't have to schedule it tonight, but if the Finance Committee would like to start these joint meetings, we can work through Sharon to try to coordinate a schedule. We did have one request from one of our board members during tax season. He's an accountant during tax season, unable to meet on other nights because he's already got clients lined up. So if we did meet before April 15th, if we could do it on a Monday evening, either an evening where the board isn't meeting, or we thought the most likely reason would be, time would be to meet at 6 p.m. Before a board meeting that regularly starts at 7, because they'd have to be here anyway. After April 15th, we could switch it to a Wednesday if that works for the committee, and we can work with all of you and come up with a time, but our thought was 6 PM prior to either a Board of Selectmen meeting or a Finance Committee meeting. And if this Finance Committee wants to discuss it and let us know, we're happy to then go forward and coordinate those meetings. It would be nice if we could get a couple meetings in between, let's say 2 meetings between now and May or mid-May, just to get an idea of where we're headed and whether we should be headed in this direction. And if the Finance Committee wants, and you agree with that, I can get all that information to you in advance. We can get you the information that we have electronically this week, and then some of the other information. I thought it would be a good idea, if you're not opposed to it, to have Tecton come in and give a brief summary to you, but probably not quite as detailed as they did with the Board of Selectmen, but more a summary of where they're looking at on the cost aspect of it, which was part of their presentation. So.
Okay, yep.
Should that be before we meet with the selectmen? Or should the selectmen meeting with the Finance Committee be before that one?
I think you could do it with the selectmen. If we cut the presentation shorter, so you're not seeing the entire thing, so the selectmen don't see it again. If the board would like to have the whole presentation, Tecton is more than happy to come in. And then that, I would recommend that just be a Finance Committee agenda. The Finance Committee gets to see it, digest it, and then get together with the Board of Selectmen. So it's completely up to you as to whether you want to see the whole. The whole presentation was about 20 minutes. It wasn't very long.
Questions, comments?
I think it would be beneficial for us to see that in advance, even if it's not the whole thing, just to eliminate redundancies for the board. We're not asking questions that have already been answered, through the presentation.
So perhaps we can get them in somewhere in the next few weeks?
Sure. If the Finance Committee is okay with that, we can see what Wednesday they could come in. I think if you had a meeting, if you started at 6:15, they could definitely come in and present and still have a few minutes for questions, or you could start at 6, and it may not take the whole hour, but at least you'd have the whole hour. I don't know what your schedules are, so I didn't want to presume that you could meet at 6, but if that's okay, we can see when they're available.
I don't work, so you guys who work, figure it out.
Is 6 o'clock good, or is that not feasible? Okay, all right, good.
Great. We'll try to get them in the next couple weeks.
Okay.
For one of your
Great.
Wednesday evenings to see it. They did a great job. I want to thank Kevin, too. He was nominated as the chair and gladly did it, and I like to say he gladly did it. I'm not so sure about that. But he did an excellent job, and you can speak that evening as well to any of the recommendations that your committee had as well. And we can get that letter to you in advance. It doesn't have to wait for that. So we'll work to get you that letter and anything else we have electronically ahead of time, including the spreadsheet of the schedule of how this would work. And it really is a moving target, because any one of the pieces on that spreadsheet could move, which shifts everything off. But it was a starting point. We needed to see what we're dealing with and what are we facing in the next couple of years if we do proceed.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions? All right, we have some minutes here. Sharon's already emailed those out to us. Looking at minutes from June 19, 2019. Does anyone have any questions or comments? No? So those are accepted, because you can always ask questions or make comments later. And the minutes of July 17, 2019. Does anyone have any questions or comments? So those are accepted, and again, you can make comments on those later. Anything else? I'm good?
Madam Chair, relative to future meetings that we're going to schedule, I didn't touch upon the capital aspect of the budget, although you have it. I think in the past, we wove that into the departments coming in that evening. I don't know if you want to do that as a standalone, or if you want to treat it the way we've done in the past several years, and work it into part of the discussion after your position on the operational side of the budget.
Yes, I assume we would do it just like that. So
Okay.
if those departments are in here, they can also talk about their capital. So we want to make sure, review the department budgets, but also take a look at those capital portions of their budget. Okay?
So next week, we have police and fire.
Okay, great. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you.